what would I love in each area of my life? What would be happening in my life if I was in love with each corner of my life? You're suspending here any doubt that you have about being able to achieve this. This is a moment where you're just given a magic wand, a genie's lamp, guaranteed success, guaranteed the full spectrum success, and you get to dream up anything that you would want. Because actually loving your life is success. Well, hello, welcome back to The Abundant Coach. I'm really thrilled for the topic that I'm going to bring you today because I think it gets missed, especially inside the coach culture that seems to be established, especially in the online world, where we commonly hear things like hustle, slay. And to me personally, this is me, try it on and see if it fits for you. But for me personally, the hustle, slay all day, stay up, get up at 5 a.m. To me, that doesn't feel life-giving. I'm like, I don't want to get up at 4 a.m. Isn't there a way in an infinite universe with infinite possibilities to have a highly successful coaching business and a balanced life? I'm not saying you don't have to work hard. I'm not saying you don't have to put your mind to things and take action and be bold and overcome fear and all that stuff. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is I don't want to have a coaching business where I have to wake up at 3 a.m. in order to be able to be successful at it. So today's episode is what is full spectrum success and how do I get it? Because this really changes the framework of this hustle and slay culture that we seem to be really interested in the coaching world. So here's the quote that I have for you today. Some people live 90 years, others live the same year 90 times. And that's a quote from Morrissey. Living life over and over and over again in the same way. I don't think any of us would say, oh yeah, I'm in for that. I want to sign up for that. And yet so many of us do it that way, rather than really living a full 90 years. And that's why I want to talk about full spectrum success today. So let's do this. First of all, I just want you to think for yourself, how do you define success? How do you personally define success? Think about the ways in which you have been saying whether you're successful or not successful. And then I want you to think, what do you think to yourself? Like if I said to you, hey, I want to tell you about someone who's really successful. Just notice the preconceived notions that come to your mind around that. Hey, I want to tell you about someone that's really successful. What comes to your mind? The type of job they have, the amount of money they have, what comes to your mind? And I have noticed in our culture, especially American culture, but tell me if this lands kind of around the world, because I know we have listeners from around the world, that it's often if I said to you, hey, I want to tell you about this person that's really successful, your mind would likely go to their job title, like they're an executive or they're a lawyer or they're this, they're that, reaching some sort of a pinnacle in wealth or career, the material things that they have, the house that they have, where they live. My guess is that for most of us, that's what would come to your mind when I say, hey, I want to tell you about someone who's really successful. And here's the reason why I want to redefine it. If you have a great job with a great title, but you hate it, is that successful? If you have a lot of money, but you're freaking out all the time because you have all sorts of undeserving patterns or fear of losing it patterns, is that really successful? If you're super rich in your job, you like it, you're successful, you make lots of money, but your relationships are failing, is that really successful? And so that's why I want to redefine what success is, because here at Brave Thinking Institute, and the way I would personally define it as well, we call it full spectrum success. That it actually isn't enough to have the job title or to have the house, but not have someone to share it with when that's your dream. So full spectrum success is loving all areas of your life, like being absolutely in love with all areas of your life. I'll give you a great example of how I used to define success and sort of a rude awakening I had. This is before I was a coach or anything, but I worked for a school district in California. I was a teacher for a couple of years. I did student teaching, taught elementary school for a couple of years. And there was a position in the school district that I worked in, and it was called the literacy coach, kind of similar to a reading specialist. It wasn't special ed. It was the step before a child goes to special ed where they get intervention from a reading teacher, and that's what I did. The literacy coach position included a district-wide position where not only would I be working as the literacy coach at my school, but I would be collaborating around with other coaches around the district, providing professional development, and I would be in charge of the professional development for the fourth grade teachers in the district. So to me, this was an accomplishment. I was young. I was probably the youngest lit coach that there ever was in that school district. And I was getting this upgrade. And it wasn't really actually a money upgrade, but it was sort of a title upgrade and a schedule upgrade. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know why this thought came to my mind, but I remember thinking to myself, when I get to sign my email for the first time with literacy coach as my title, like I'm going to feel amazing. Like my life is somehow going to change. And then I remember writing that first email with my signature line saying literacy coach and not feeling any different. And I can actually remember where I was standing, remember the moment and go, you know, I just remember thinking to myself, like, why is it I thought this was going to be so different? And I feel nothing different. And that is because in all areas of my life, there were places where I was very unfulfilled, unhappy, etc. So it's like you can put the title on top of it, but if nothing's changing about the way you're feeling about your life inside, then it's kind of a moot point. I mean, was I happy to be the literacy coach? Yes. Was I happy with my new schedule? Yes. But there were so many other things going on in my life that I didn't feel that success because everything else was weighing so heavy. So full spectrum success, loving all areas of your life. You love the home you live in. You love the area you live in. You love your family. You love the relationships you're building. You feel fulfilled at work. You are just not, that doesn't, and by the way, full spectrum success doesn't mean everything's perfect. It just means the main parts of your life, you're really in love with what you've created. So how do we create this? Okay, we can define it that way, Lauren. Sure, I agree with you. If I'm miserable, but I have a great job title, it doesn't make me successful. Okay, we've redefined that. But now how do I go about achieving full spectrum success? Because one of the questions that came in, I'll just do it right now. Usually I do a coaching corner where I ask a question, or I tell you a common question people ask about this, or someone sends in a question. The question is, how do you even start thinking about full spectrum success when it feels so overwhelming because you're not in love with all these different areas of your life? You want to go from the shame scale to curiosity. If you can get yourself out of shame, like, oh, there's all these things and it's going to be so hard to change it, and where do I even start? Of course, you're going to feel like crap. Anybody would. So we want to change the thinking. We want to change the mindset around it. And we actually want to ask a different question, get curious about, what if I just explored each of these different areas of my life and what I would like instead? If I'm not happy with this, what would I like instead? And we just go to curiosity. We stay out of judgment. That's really going to help. So the beginning of creating this idea of how to start creating full spectrum success is asking yourself a question. And that is, what would I love in each area of my life? What would be happening in my life if I was in love with each corner of my life? You're suspending here any doubt that you have about being able to achieve this. This is a moment where you're just given a magic wand, a genie's lamp, guaranteed success, guaranteed the full spectrum success, and you get to dream up anything that you would want. Because actually loving your life is success. So if I loved my life, what would I look like? What would that look like? So for example, if you loved your work in the world, what would that look like? And I'm going to say here, and I know a lot of you who are listening have done this with me or with the Institute many, many times. Some of you, this is the first time you've ever done this. But I want you to not go, oh, I've done that before, I've written a vision. I want you to really pause on this for a second. And I want you to get out of list making, like I would have this, I would have this, I would have this, I would have this. And let's get more emotional about it. And let's actually think to ourselves, okay, a day in the life of my work in the world that I love, what would I be doing? And you're going to dream into that. Would I be speaking on stages as a coach? Would I be recording a podcast episode? Would I be a guest on a famous podcast? Would I be actually just doing a couple client calls and that's it for the day? Would I be working on a PowerPoint for a new program? Would I be going out in my community and serving? Like, what would your work in the world look like if you were in love with it, if you were feeling super fulfilled? Would you get on an online summit and speak to a crowd of 5,000 people? Would you be writing a book? And maybe it's a mix of all of these things, but if you loved your work in the world and you actually woke up in the morning and thought, I love this, what would that be? So that's your work in the world. Now, here's the deal. If you haven't yet become a coach, or you are a coach, or whatever the deal is, and you're not 100% clear what you would love, which, by the way, in the beginning is very normal. I would say 60 to maybe 70% of people, when asked that question, the first feeling they have is, I have no idea. And so if that's you, all good. Like, we're just going to go with that. Okay. So let me tell you a story about a client I had. I had this client who had been, she was one of my coaching clients. She had been an accountant, I believe she was. Some of the issues that she had with that is it was boring. She didn't like who she worked with. She didn't want to be sitting at a desk all day. And so she had enough resources in her life that she could quit the accounting job while she figured out the next step of what she wanted to do. And so in our coaching, she was always like, I have no idea what I want to do. I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. I think she was probably in her 60s, if I had to guess. But I do want to work, and I want to do something, but I have no idea what I do. No idea what I would do. Now, first of all, let me just put a pause on this story and say this. The more you repeat, I have no idea, I have no idea, I have no idea, you're freaking out your nervous system step by step there. So I'm going to ask you to really pause that. Stop saying that. Do you want to have no idea? If you would love to have an idea, stop saying you have no idea. Reverberating with that energy. So that would be my first. I probably did that coaching with her, but let me just say it to you. If you keep repeating that, it's going to be that. I would invite you, if you're that person who's like, I have no idea what I want, I'm not sure, start saying, I'm so happy to be discovering what I would love. And just notice the vibrational difference of, I have no idea, I have no idea, to I'm so happy I'm discovering it. I'm so happy ideas are coming to me. You actually set the groundwork in your mind before you feel it. So say, I'm so happy that I'm discovering now. Okay. So she was saying she had no idea. And I took her through this exercise. If you would absolutely love it, you had a magic wand, you could do anything, no holds barred, you're guaranteed success. What would you love? And she was blank. And so I said to her, okay, let's just get a little bit more in the nitty gritty. First of all, how much money would you love to make? Let's just start there, because you're saying you'd love to work. I can't remember if she said she had to work for finances, but you'd love to work. How much money would you love to make? And she said, well, I would love to make at least $80,000. Okay, so you're generating $80,000. So now we know something. And that is enough to start. Even if that's all she knew, it's like, I'm so happy and grateful I'm generating $80,000. Okay, because now I have something that I would be in love with. She doesn't just want $80,000. She can make that as an accountant. So I said, so would you be working in an office? Would you be working from home? Where would you be working if you could just wave a magic wand? She's like, oh no, I would be working outside. I would be working out in nature. Beautiful. So I'm generating $80,000 working out in nature. That right there is enough to start establishing a pattern or a blueprint for what full spectrum success would be for you. So I said, you're working outside. Why would you love to work outside? I was just curious. And she said, I love working with birds. Okay. I love birds. I'm a birder. I go bird watching. All right. So you're working outside, something with birds, 80 grand a year, anything else? And she just threw in, and I want to work with really nice people, because in the accounting world, sometimes I worked with not so nice people. So that was all she knew about full spectrum success for her. I'm outside, I'm working with birds, I'm working with nice people, 80 grand. When she quit being an accountant, she didn't just spend 1 year trying to figure this out. 5 years she was in a, I can't figure this out pattern, until we asked these questions about what full spectrum success would look like to her. And she's created this vision, and immediately on this coaching session, it didn't take time, on this coaching session, she says, oh my gosh, I just got an idea. And the idea was that she had a friend that worked for the Audubon Society. Audubon Society is the biggest birding organization in North America, at least. It might be in the world. I could call them. So notice this. Why was it that for years and years and years, she had no idea what to do? But now she not only had an idea, she had an action step she could take, because she aligned her mind with what that full spectrum success would look like for her. She went on to get a great job. She even met the love of her life out in nature. So it was really awesome. Okay, so if I loved my work, now if you loved your relationships, what would success to you look like in relationships? Would you have a significant other? Would you spend more time with your kids? What would it be? And we're going to do the same thing for relationships. Even if I just have a couple of sentences of what it would look like for me, that's my start. That's my start. I can't achieve full spectrum success if I have no idea what direction I'm heading in. So that's next. What would it look like if you loved your wellness results? So when I say wellness, health and well-being is another way to say it. I'm not just talking about physical health, although that can be included, but like your spiritual, your mental, your emotional health. What would that look like if you were a success in that area? If you were in love with it? And I want to say in the health and well-being one, it's tempting to go like, oh, I would lose weight, I would work out. And maybe those things are dreams to you and you'd be in love with that. But think about what health brings you. So like, for example, on this, I had a client who she wanted to get healthy and lose weight, but it wasn't working for her. It wasn't happening. And I knew that's not motivating to her. If it was motivating to her, she would have taken steps. And so finally I asked her, well, why do you want to lose weight? And she said, well, I want to be able to roll on the grass with my grandkids. So success to her in the area of health and well-being looked like rolling in the grass with her grandkids. So again, don't go with conventional shit here. Go with what you would absolutely love. What would wellness success look like to you and only you? And then the final category would be, what would you be in love with in the area of time and money freedom? Time meaning I don't have to ask my calendar for permission. I can do whatever I want to do. Money meaning if I want to go do something, it's in my bank account. Time and money freedom. What would success look like to you in that area for you personally so that you would wake up and go, I love my life? So I'll tell you a little story around the time and money freedom, because as you dream into this, there's going to be a part of your mind that says, how are you going to have that? And that's not realistic and blah, blah, blah. Remember, we're not navigating any of that. We're just saying, if I was in love with my life, I might not even ever take action on this, just calm down, nervous system. But if I was in love with my life, what would full spectrum success look like? That's all we're doing. So for me personally, I start my coaching business. And after probably a year into my coaching business, it started to feel constrictive to me because I was working a lot, which is, hey, good problem to have as a coach. I'm working a lot. I have lots of clients. But I was starting to feel like I felt like when I was a teacher, like, oh my God, I'm working back to back to back to back. I don't have a lunch break. Blah. So I was like, okay, this is time to look at what would it look like if I was in love with this area of my life. And I knew I didn't want to see clients on Fridays. That's what came to my mind. Like I could do marketing work, I could do admin work, or I could just take the day off, but I don't want to see clients on Fridays. So all these fears come up about, well, what if the Friday is the only day the client can work with you? And, what if, blah, 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 like, what if you don't make as much money because you're not working on Friday? All these fears come up. And so what I did is I just went forward into my calendar, beyond where I had anything scheduled. And I just visualized 4 days and Fridays off, or Fridays with just admin or marketing work. And it felt so good. Like when I saw that on my calendar, when I could actually visualize it, I'm like, this feels so good. Now, the hilarious thing is I was so worried about what if Friday is the only day that this client has available to see me. And literally from the time I made that decision, and I would, enroll a new client and I would say, I have Thursdays at 2 or Mondays at 5 or whatever it was. No one ever asked me for Friday, ever. It's hilarious. It's like I was so worked up about that, thinking I couldn't have my full spectrum success because of this condition or whatever. And it didn't even turn out to be true. And it felt so much better. And I was in love with that. Look at my calendar and be like, I'm in love with not having things scheduled on Fridays. So now what do I do with all of this? What I want you to do with each of these categories that we've gone over, if you're in love with your work in the world, for most of you, that's a career. Maybe it's becoming a coach. Maybe it's your coaching business, whatever it is. If I was in love with my relationships, if I was in love with my health and wellness, and if I was in love with my time and money freedom, what would it look like? And I'm going to highly, highly, highly recommend that you write it down. This is what full spectrum success looks like to me. And it's not going to look like anybody else on this planet. It's not going to look like how I would define it. It's not going to look like how anyone on this planet would define it, because this is your unique blueprint, your unique, I would say, soul print, exactly what you would love. And you're going to find that even though, yes, you're going to have doubts about it and you're not going to know how to do it at first and all of that, but then internally you're going to see that, what you've written, and you're going to feel very expansive when you think about it. I remember seeing Darren Hardy, who is a success coach, and he talked about when he was wanting to attract his wife, who her name is Georgia, but before he knew her, he wrote down every single quality he would love in the love of his life. And it turns out that his wife, when he met her and married her, and she's every single thing on that list because it was defined. He had a blueprint. He could make decisions. He could go toward it. So I want you to write it all down, everything that you would love if you were having that full spectrum success. When you write it down, all you have to do now, and this is like so calming to the nervous system. I don't have to know how to get there. I don't have to know every step. I don't have to take action on it. There's nothing I have to do. But if I would love to get closer to that full spectrum success, what's one step I could take towards these things that I've written down? Just one step. Because here's what I know. You look at my story. I write down my vision of full spectrum success, and a step that I could take is to no longer offer Fridays. No matter what the fear is saying, no matter this, that's just a simple step. And it moved mountains. It moved mountains when it came to how I felt about the life I was living. So you're going to write it all down, and you're going to actually take a step. And you're going to see, as Mary Morrissey would say, baby steps will take you all the way up Mount Everest. This is such a wonderful process for your soul, because you're going to hear things that you haven't been letting yourself hear up until this point. So going back to full spectrum success is loving life in every area. And we don't have to do it overnight. You don't have to fix it today, but now you know, and you have a blueprint of what full spectrum success looks like to you, and you take a step toward it. With a coaching hat on now. I mean, this is really more about you. This episode is about you leaning into your full spectrum success and starting to align your actions with this blueprint. But one thing that I will say, I want you to put your coach hat on for a second. And when you work with clients around this, you will never, ever have a client that is truly satisfied until they have this. They can reach the work goals, they can do whatever, they can hustle and slay all day or whatever they're wanting to do. But until they start to experience at least a piece of this feeling of full spectrum success, no amount of money, no amount of goal is going to give them the full life satisfaction that they're looking for from a coach. So I don't care what kind of coaching you do. You're a real estate coach, you're a health coach, you're a NLP practitioner, you're a Brave Thinking Institute coach, you are a mindset coach, a success coach, a business coach, whatever kind of coaching you're doing. I would highly recommend making this part of your repertoire, that you have a willingness to look beyond just the moment to moment of the very specific niche that you coach, and ask them some of these questions about broadening what they would absolutely love. Because you're going to find, like I said earlier with the example of the client who wanted to roll on the grass with her grandkids, it actually wasn't about losing the weight. It was about where that would bring her and what that would look like to her. And you want to, I would say, give your clients permission to think outside the box on what success really means to them. I'll just say one more thing about success. I once had a mentor ask me, what are your rules for success? I was like, what do you mean, what are my rules for success? And he said, well, when do you get to feel successful? It's a great question. We all have personal rules for success of how and when we allow ourselves to feel successful. And I thought about that. And I would say I was pretty common to most people. It's like, I get to feel really successful. I get to feel successful when I reach a big, giant goal. That was my personal rule for success. So he's like, oh, so you only really get to feel good and successful like every once in a while when you hit the big pinnacle goals. Are you in love with that? Could you redefine your rules for success? I was like, oh, this is so good. Because remember, I already, at the point I'm having this conversation with my mentor, have a view of full spectrum success. It's interesting because I decided to make a very simple rule for when I get to feel successful. It's not outside of full spectrum success. Of course, I want that. I want to wake up feeling in love with my life. But I'm not going to wait until it's all perfect to get to feel successful. So I made a personal rule for success. You can make it anything you want. You can make your personal rule for success that you're endeavoring towards your full spectrum success. Anytime I think about it or take a step toward it, I get to feel successful. Or you get to feel successful. Another thing could be is like, I laughed once today and that brought me joy. And so anytime I feel joy, I get to feel successful. It could be anything you want, but really think about what your personal rules for success have been. So I decided to make a new personal rule for success, and I get to call every day successful if I do this one thing. And that one thing for me personally is reminding myself that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. If once today I reminded myself that I'm more than just my human body, that there's more to me than just the material things around me, that I truly am spirit and form, I call that a successful day. Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, this got off track. What the hell does that have to do with full spectrum success? Well, I personally know it's only when I'm connected to that part of myself can I really access ideas, the infinite, the feeling of I love my life does not come when I'm all intertwined and interrupted by my nervous system. So if I'm able to access that part of myself once a day, I know it's leading me to that full spectrum success. So I've given you a lot of assignments in this podcast episode. You didn't know you were going to have homework. You know what? You don't have to do it, but I know for sure if you write down what your vision of full spectrum success is and take a step toward it, you're already going to feel so much freer. I love you all very much. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really, truly am holding that it's helping you. It's helping you move forward. We're here for you. Reach out anytime. Rate and review the podcast. Reach out to us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. I'll see you for sure in the next episode. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss a new upload. You can help our channel continue to grow as we invest in creating more great content for coaches. Lastly, check the description below for helpful links to the resources mentioned in this video. Thank you and have an amazing day.